Welcome to the Missouri Bill of Rights. That's right. Missouri has a Bill of Rights in their Constitution, and much of this is going to sound very similar to the U.S. Constitution. Parts are different. One of the most notable differences is the Missouri Bill of Rights is found in Article 1 instead of at the end like the U.S. Constitution. All state constitutions have a Bill of Rights. So in the original Constitution, there wasn't one. The framers didn't think it was all that necessary, but the Anti-Federalists did. So they compromised. The Federalists promised to add it later, and the Anti-Federalists supported ratification of the Constitution, and that's why it's at the end. Good old James Madison wrote up that Bill of Rights, and boom, everybody was happy, or as happy as Americans can be with their government. Well, by the time Missouri became a state in 1821, after the Missouri Compromise, the practice of all states having their own Bill of Rights was still very important. So important that Missouri put their Bill of Rights in Article 1 and not at the end, like an afterthought. The Missouri Constitution begins with the preamble. The U.S. Constitution's preamble lines out the goals of government, but the Missouri Constitution does not. It simply states, "We, the people of Missouri, with profound reverence for the supreme ruler of the universe and grateful for his goodness, do establish this Constitution for the better government of the state." Now that's a little confusing, but it's not as confusing as it sounds. Just take out the words within the commas after Missouri and after goodness, then read it again. Then read the words in the comma for complete meaning. Watch. "We, the people of Missouri, do establish this Constitution for the better government of the state with profound reverence to the supreme ruler of the universe and grateful for his goodness." Is that better? Makes more sense, right? Teachers have to do that kind of stuff all the time with your essays when you go comma crazy. So that's just giving you a taste of your own medicine. At any rate, according to the Missouri Preamble, the people created the Constitution to make a better government of the state, and they did it in the sight of God. After the Preamble comes Article 1, the Bill of Rights. A copy of the Missouri Constitution can be found on the Missouri Secretary of State's website. Just go to www.sos.mo.gov and search Missouri Constitution. I know. You'll just search whatever search engine you use, but make sure when you do that, pay attention to the date. You see, state constitutions change regularly. Sometimes they're thrown out completely and replaced. Missouri has had 4 constitutions, 4. This one has been amended multiple times and will continue to be amended regularly. Shoot, there could be a proposed amendment on the next ballot with major changes. Did you get that? On the next ballot. No amendment can be made to the Missouri Constitution without a vote of the people. That's Article 1, Section 1. The people make the government. Section 2 is all about promotion of general welfare, natural rights of persons, equality under the law, and purpose of government. What this means is government has the responsibility to make sure people have the opportunity to succeed. It is not government's job to give you success. It is government's job to give you the opportunity to succeed. For example, everyone in the United States has the opportunity to get a high school diploma, but not everybody is going to get one because not everybody is going to take advantage of the opportunities that are given to them. Natural rights is the second part of this, and natural rights comes straight down from the Enlightenment philosophers, specifically John Locke. He said the natural rights are life, liberty, and property. Sound familiar? It should, because Thomas Jefferson tweaked those natural rights in the Declaration of Independence and turned them into inalienable rights and listed them as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Understand that it wasn't illegal to plagiarize in 1776. It was a compliment. My, have things changed. The third part of this section is equality under the law. Basically, equality under the law means it doesn't matter who your daddy is. If you are following the laws or not following the laws, you're treated the same under the law. I know. We still got some ways to go on that one. I believe we'll continue to evolve as a people. At least I hope. The last part of this section is the purpose of government. And it says the purpose of government is to make sure the people are taken care of. Whatever that means. It's relative because there are two very popular and opposite ideologies, liberal and conservative. So that idea of government taking care of the people has different interpretations. And whatever interpretation you hold is how you're going to see this right in the Missouri Bill of Rights. So good luck with that. Section 3 is about the powers of the people over internal affairs and constitution and form of government. Basically, this is saying that the people have total power over whether the Constitution is amended or discarded or kept. And the people have a say in how it is enforced. The people are the watchdogs of the Missouri Constitution and the Missouri government. This really sounds good. But when the people don't pay attention, the people in power can abuse that power. So pay attention. It's your constitutional right. Section 4 is about the independence of Missouri and submission of certain amendments to the Constitution of the United States. You see, Missouri is free and independent. The people get to have the power within the state. No other state can tell us what to do. We do what we want within our state, as long as we don't go against the U.S. Constitution and federal law. Missouri is a completely sovereign state. Remember that $10 word, sovereign. It means the one who has the power to make decisions. Section 5, 6, and 7 all deal with religion. The basic gist of all three of them is you have freedom of religion in the state of Missouri, but it's limited. No one can do anything naughty in the name of religion. For example, no more than one wife, no getting kids involved with worshiping when there's poisonous snakes involved, that kind of stuff. Questionable behavior. That's pretty much a limit to your freedom of religion in the state of Missouri. Now, a limit to your freedom of religion has absolutely nothing to do with human sacrifice or animal sacrifice, because that kind of stuff falls under completely different laws, right? If a religion has to have a human sacrifice to please a god, it's not a freedom of religion as much as it is murder. And murder is just flat out illegal. So, you can't do that anyway. Also, the state of Missouri can't tell anyone how to worship or where to worship. Missouri can't give any money for religious purposes, so no tax dollars that you pay to the Missouri State Department of Revenue is going to go for religious purposes. Now, there's some loopholes in that because there's some religious institutions that are doing things for the community that aren't necessarily religious, but do promote general welfare, and they may receive government money, but it takes a lot of paperwork. The last bit of freedom of religion is that anyone can pray in the state of Missouri, anywhere, anytime, as long as it doesn't disrupt official proceedings. So any public space, anywhere. Shoot, you can pray in the classroom if you want to, any old time. Teachers can't stop you as long as your prayer is not interrupting the learning process. So no speaking in tongues or shaking around and stuff like that. If the Holy Spirit touches you in class, that's interrupting the learning process. So that's off limits. Section 8 deals with freedom of speech. Just like in the very First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, the people in the state of Missouri are guaranteed freedom of speech with the same limitations. No libel, no slander. Section 9, it allows anyone to peacefully assemble and petition their government. Think of a school assembly. To peacefully assemble means that more than one person can meet up anywhere for any peaceful purpose. The petition that is being allowed with this section is a verb. not a noun. It's not talking about that piece of paper that's being stuffed in your face at Target to sign for some cause someone wants to put on the ballot. That's the noun type of petition. This is talking about asking government officials for something or informing them of something. They can always say no, but you can't get arrested for asking. Section 10 deals with the due process of law within the state of Missouri. The United States Constitution, Amendment 5 and Amendment 14, guarantee the due process of law as well. But the Missouri Constitution promises the due process of law in this section when dealing with people accused of breaking Missouri law. This has nothing to do with the lawmaking process. It's confusing, but understand what the due process of law basically says is if someone is arrested, that person gets to go through the entire process before a conviction. No one can be arrested, convicted, and executed on the same day, like in the movie Judge Dredd. Section 11 guarantees that no one will be put in jail or prison for debt. The debt they're talking about is like hospital bills, credit cards, mortgages, car loans, things like that. However, people can go to jail for not paying parking tickets or fines. You can go to jail for not paying your taxes. But as far as the other debt is concerned, nope. No matter what debt collectors imply, no jail for debt. Section 12 is all about the writ of habeas corpus. This guarantees that the writ of habeas corpus shall never be suspended. Habeas corpus is Latin for present the body. In other words, your body gets to be in the presence of the entire due process, including the courtroom. When your trial is taking place, you get to be there. Section 13 deals with ex post facto laws, impairment of contracts, and other privileges. What it does is it guarantees that there will be no ex post facto laws. In other words, a law has to be made before a person can be held accountable for upholding those laws. I have a perfect example. When I was a kid, there was a time when we only had one vehicle, and it was a truck. Not an extended cab, just an old square body. There were 5 people in my family, so if we were going to go somewhere as a family, my folks would throw beanbag chairs in the back of the pickup, and we kids, we would ride in the back there while mom and dad rode in the cab. Today, this is considered child endangerment. But when I was a kid, it was completely legal, and my parents will never be arrested or fined for not putting their children in seatbelts. In the same spirit, if a contract is made between 2 individuals, the state cannot pass a law in retrospect that gets them out of it. Also, Missouri government can't make laws that'll benefit some people and not other people. No favorites. Section 14 deals with trials. All courts in the state of Missouri are open. If you want to spend the summer at the courthouse watching trials, you can do that. You can go to anybody's trial that you want to go to as long as the judge doesn't close the courtroom. Judges will close the courtrooms if observers are getting too disruptive or if it's a high profile case and he's worried about it becoming a circus. It also says that people cannot buy justice or be denied justice for a price. Justice cannot be withheld until a later time. It has to be swift. Swift justice, it's kind of relative nowadays because there's a lot of court cases going on, so people must wait their turn on the docket. Just like the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 15 guarantees there will be no unreasonable searches and seizures without a warrant. Anytime authorities come to your house, they have to have a warrant from a judge. Period. Well, maybe not period, because there are cases where authorities have had to go into people's houses if they believe there was immediate danger. Section 16 deals with grand juries. Grand jury is part of the due process of law. Whenever a felony has been committed and someone has been accused, a grand jury takes a look at all the evidence, screens all the witnesses' statements, and decides whether there's enough evidence to go to trial. It's not the same thing as what you see on TV, TikTok, and YouTube, where the court's being held. No. A grand jury is just a bunch of paperwork, and the jurors look over it and they say, "Yep, there's enough evidence that says this feller did it, so the trial is on." Or they look over it and they say, "Nope, there's not enough evidence, so no need for a trial this time." Section 17 is another step in the due process of law. Basically, it says that no person can be convicted of a felony without being indicted and without having enough information to prove that there should be a trial. It also says that the exception for a felony is anyone serving in the armed forces or in a place of public danger, and they're trying to protect people. So that means if you're a soldier or you're a police officer, the indictment thing doesn't always apply to you because you're trying to help innocent people escape danger. Section 18 has three parts, A, B, and C. It's all about the rights of the accused in criminal prosecutions and depositions and felony cases and accessibility. It's a lot. So let me narrow it down a little bit. If someone's charged with a crime, they have rights. They can defend themselves in court, and they can have a lawyer. They have the right to know what they're being accused of. They can see and question the people who are saying they did something wrong. They can ask the court to bring witnesses who can help defend them. They deserve a fast public trial with a fair jury from their area. Some felony cases, if a witness can't or shouldn't be at trial, the court can allow a person's statement, it's called a deposition, to be recorded ahead of time and then played during the court proceedings. In cases that involve sexual crimes against someone who's under 18, the court can allow evidence that the accused did something similar in the past, even if they weren't officially charged. This is to support the victim's story or to show that the accused has a pattern of doing whatever it was they did that was bad. However, if the judge thinks that the evidence would unfairly influence the jury more than help, they can choose not to allow that evidence. So judges have a lot of power in these cases. Section 19 is about self-incrimination and double jeopardy. Basically, no one can be forced to say things in court that could make them look guilty in a criminal case. That's called the right to remain silent. If what you say will make your friend look guilty, you're required to say that because that's not protected. If someone's found not guilty by a jury, they can't be put on trial again for the same crime. That's called double jeopardy, and it's not allowed. However, if they repeat that crime or commit a new one, they will have to answer for those. When a jury can't agree on a verdict, like they can't decide if a person's innocent or guilty, the judge can end that trial and decide to hold that person in jail or let them out on bail and set a new trial for later. If someone's found guilty, but there's a mistake, like paperwork was done wrong or the due process wasn't followed correctly, a higher court can throw out that conviction and start the trial all over again. Section 20 is about bail. Bail is not a get out of jail free card. Bail means that you don't have to be in jail until your trial. You pay money, and that money is a promise that you're going to come back for your trial. So if you put up bail, what that's doing is guaranteeing that you'll be back. They're going to give you your money back when you come. Unless, of course, you borrow that money from a bail bondsman. And if you borrow that money from a bail bondsman, then the bail bondsman gets their money back when you show up at court. Section 21 deals with excessive bail and fines, cruel and unusual punishment. Guys, bail cannot be excessive. That means if you steal a candy bar from the local convenience store, you're not going to get $1 million bail. But if you're in a drug cartel and there's a good chance you're going to run off to another country if you get bail, then it's going to be pretty high because they think you're a flight risk. As far as bail goes, the cost of bail has to fit the crime you're accused of, just like the punishment has to fit the crime you're accused of. This section guarantees there will be no cruel and unusual punishment. Shoplifting a t-shirt from Walmart is not going to get you a life sentence. That would be cruel and unusual punishment. But don't shoplift a t-shirt from Walmart. Just don't shoplift from anywhere. That's bad. The U.S. Supreme Court decided a long time ago that the death penalty is not considered cruel and unusual punishment for particularly heinous crimes, but it's up to the states to practice that form of punishment. Missouri practices that form of punishment, but there is a very specific list of crimes that people can get the death penalty for, and the victim of those crimes had to have died. Section 22 has two parts. It's all about the right of a trial by jury, qualification of jurors, and what female jurors can and can't do. And in other words, people have the right to a trial by jury, and that cannot be taken away. Usually a jury has 12 people, but in smaller courts, called courts not of record, the law might allow fewer than 12. This section distinguishes between civil and criminal courts. Civil courts are between two parties, the plaintiff and the defendant. Criminal courts determine if the accused is guilty, so there's a prosecutor and a defendant. The person on trial can choose to skip having a jury altogether, but only if the judge agrees. If they do that, the judge alone decides if they're guilty or not guilty. That's called a bench trial. The second part of this section is focusing on women. It says that no one can be disqualified for jury duty because of their gender, but women can be excused if they ask. Section 23 is about the right to keep and bear arms. You see, every citizen in the state of Missouri has the right to own and carry guns and ammo for protection. People can also be called in to help in emergencies called civil powers. These rights are called unalienable, which means they cannot be taken away unless people are violent felons or people who a court has decided are mentally dangerous to themselves and others. Section 24 is kind of confusing because it talks about the military being subordinate to civil powers. All that is that a governor gets to say when the National Guard comes into the state and takes care of business. The governor is elected, and because he's elected, he is a civil servant. He wasn't volunteered or drafted or anything like that. So because he is elected, he is in charge of the military. Oh, and no soldier can be put into private homes without permission. Article 1, Section 25 is all about elections and suffrage. Elections in the state of Missouri are open and free. 18-year-olds cannot be forbidden to vote. Elections are controlled and held by the state government, not the national government. This is a beautiful example of federalism. The national government does have some power over elections when there's a civil rights issue, but for the most part, the state of Missouri can handle elections any way they want. Missouri has delegated elections to county governments. County governments take care of finding polling places and staffing them. That means the county finds the people to hand out the ballots to the voters. Counties take care of counting the ballots and reporting those counts back to the states. Section 26, 27, and 28 all deal with eminent domain. Eminent domain just means that government can take private property for public use with just compensation. In other words, government can take your property, but they got to pay you for it. They can't take your property for private use, so it can't be a moneymaker for the county or a town where your property is taken by the government and then sold at a higher price. That's a no-no. But they can take private property and make roads and bridges and put in railroad tracks and parks. If they don't use all of the property that they took through eminent domain, then the person who originally lost that property has the first opportunity to buy back portions that weren't used. Section 29 is about organized labor and collective bargaining. This section is full of vocabulary, so pay close attention. It deals with organized labor and collective bargaining. Organized labor means unions. A union is an organization that is basically hired by the workers in a company to negotiate benefits with the employer. Collective bargaining is that process of negotiation. So collective bargaining is basically when a union representative sits across the desk from the boss and talks to the boss about what would be best for the workers and what the workers want. In the state of Missouri, unions and collective bargaining are completely legal. You can never be fired for hiring a union, and you can never be fired for asking your boss for stuff. Missouri is called a closed shop state because if your company is unionized, then you have to pay into the union. If your company is not unionized, then you don't have to worry about paying into the union at all. All employers have to allow the employees to have a union if they want one. Being in a union means paying union dues, and usually that comes right out of your check. The opposite of a closed shop state is a right to work state. In a right to work state, if your company is authorized, you can choose to pay into the union or choose not to pay into the union. I know that sounds really, really good, but the problem is if you are a unionized company in a right to work state, there are usually a lot of free riders who don't pay dues but enjoy the perks that the union fought for. Let's say 1,000 people pay into the union dues, but there's 10,000 workers. That union is still going to collective bargain or negotiate for benefits with the boss. But the union can't negotiate with the boss for just the 1,000 people who are paying their dues. They're negotiating for all 10,000 workers. So the 9,000 people who don't pay union dues are still going to get union benefits. Kansas is like that. Kansas is a right to work state. Missouri is a closed shop state. Missouri voters need to understand the difference between right to work and closed shop because it seems to pop up quite regularly on the ballot. Section 30 is kind of a cool one. There's a bunch of vocabulary in here too, so pay attention. First of all, treason. Treason means that someone has tried to overthrow the government. If someone tries to overthrow the government, the Missouri Constitution says that there has to be 2 witnesses to that activity before an accusation can be made. There can be no bills of attainder. That means that Congress has convicted someone of something that they deem criminal. No, Congress cannot do that. And when I say Congress, I mean the General Assembly in the state of Missouri. They don't get to accuse anybody of a crime. Finding guilt is solely the job of the judicial branch, not the legislative branch. This section also discusses corruption of blood and forfeitures. Sounds creepy, right? Well, it isn't. Kind of. Corruption of blood means that you can never be held accountable for what your parents do. If one of your parents commits a crime, let's say a bank robbery, you will never have to pay back their check. You will never have to pay back the money they stole. You will never go to jail for their crime. You are not accountable for what your parents do, and you will not have to give up or forfeit any of your property or wealth to pay back something your parents did. Also, this deals with suicide and accidental death. If a family living on a property and the person dies through suicide or accidental death, and that person's name is on the deed, the family doesn't have to move off of the land. They get to stay. They don't have to be homeless. So that's kind of cool. Section 31 deals with fines and imprisonment. In the most simplest terms, this section means a government office cannot decide on its own to make a rule. Say, if you break this, you're going to jail. Only elected lawmakers have that power. Section 32 deals with crime victims' rights. Missouri law gives crime victims certain rights to help protect them and keep them involved in the judicial process. They get to be at court when the accused person is allowed to be there. They get to speak at guilty pleas. They get to speak at bail hearings, sentencing, and probation or parole hearings, unless the judge decides that it's not in their best interest. The victim gets to know when trials and hearings are happening. They get restitution or money paid back by the criminal. Crime victims get to have a case handled quickly, including appeals, but still giving the accused enough time to prepare their defense. Victims are protected from the defendant or anyone working for them. They are to be informed if the accused escapes, is released, or is about to be released from jail. And they get a lesson on how the justice system works, what services are available, and, if requested, more information about the crime that was committed against them. Bail can be denied to protect others. Even though the state constitution allows for bail, a judge can deny it if it looks like the accused is dangerous to the victim, the community, or anyone else. Section 33 is marriage validity. This section is completely unconstitutional because it says that marriage in the state of Missouri is only recognized between a man and a woman, and only marriage between a man and a woman in the state of Missouri can exist. Well, according to the Supreme Court of the United States, in Obergefell v. Hodges, all states must recognize marriage between consenting adults regardless of gender. As you know, the Missouri Constitution cannot go against the United States Constitution. And since Obergefell v. Hodges, same-sex marriage is constitutional. Well, Section 33 is still in the Missouri Constitution because in order to take it out, it has to be put on the ballot and the people have to vote, and that's pretty expensive. And it takes a long time to get something on the ballot, even if it's obsolete. Section 34 says English is the official language in the state of Missouri. That means that if there is an official document, it has to be in English. All official government meetings have to be in English. It includes talking about public businesses, making decisions, and creating or discussing public policy. And it doesn't matter if it's on Zoom or in person or on the phone. All English. Section 35 is the right to farm. This sounds pretty simple, and it is, but it's got deep roots. Basically, it says that agriculture in Missouri is protected, and the state is not going to make blanket laws about farmers and how they operate. That's up to county governments to decide. For example, if there's a large corporate pig farm on a hill and a small farmer at the bottom of the hill, that small farmer may have some problems keeping his crops growing if all that pig stuff comes rolling down the hill during the heavy rains. Well, it's the job of the county to decide what needs to happen in that situation, not the state. Even though the state's not going to mess with regulations that determine who can farm, where to farm, and how to farm, they do have some regulations for agriculture, just like they have subsidies for farmers. This amendment was an attempt to make sure farming did not get regulated into extinction by well-meaning city folks who don't understand the farming culture. Section 36 is about reproductive rights. This is the last right in the Missouri Bill of Rights, and it was added in 2025. It explains that laws cannot ban any kind of birth control or abortion before viability, and no one can be punished for their reproductive decisions. Viability means a child can exist outside of the womb, which is usually around 7 months. So, this amendment theoretically will allow abortion up to 7 months, depending on a doctor's opinion and the physical or mental health of the mother. Before this amendment, abortions were permitted only to save the life of the mother or to prevent the risk to the woman. She had to wait 72 hours and go through counseling. Minors had to have parental consent, and now there is no restriction. Well, that's it. That's the Missouri Bill of Rights from Article 1 of the Missouri Constitution. I promise the other articles are significantly shorter and more focused, believe it or not.